for public administration and public policy. And at the bottom, you probably can't see it, but my activities I like to do are working out. I like making music. I like working outside, going hunting, fishing, just the standard stuff. The topics we're going to discuss today are seatbelts, driving under the influence, crashes, and texting driving. The texting and driving one's a pretty big one. This one just changed recently with our law, so there are several penalties for individuals that are caught while using their cell phones behind the wheel. So in this first picture, this is all about seatbelts. So this individual that I was given the information on was a well-respected individual in their community. They were driving, they got into a car crash, and the seatbelt on both the driver and the passenger side, as you can see, are both already buckled in, and the person was just sitting on top of them. That doesn't work. When you're involved in a crash, what's gonna happen is that if you're rolling or if you're hitting something or a fixed object, you're gonna keep moving in the crash. Your body will eventually just come to a stop after everything has come to a complete stop. This person was eventually ejected outside of the vehicle. The injuries I'm actually not aware of. I don't know if the person actually died or not. So driving under the influence. This is a pretty hit and home run thing for many of us in law enforcement and for some of the loved ones that have had to deal with this. The current BAC for 21 and over is a 0.08. You can be arrested still at a 0.05, and that all depends on the tests that I view on the scene after I've made a traffic stop. For 21 and under, which is many of the kids in this room, there is a zero tolerance that is associated with the BAC level. That level is actually a 0.02. And during every traffic stop, when I suspect someone is under the influence of alcohol and or drugs, we will conduct sobriety tests for every individual to ensure they are safe to operate the motor vehicle. If you're involved in a crash, there's two things at the bottom, the vehicular battery and vehicular homicide. That is both felony charges that results from that, which is usually going to be jail or prison time. So the three major things in crashes, all crashes have a fault. As a job for law enforcement, I investigate the crash, I investigate everyone's side of the story from both parties. Insurance company also do their separate investigation as well. We do not actually decide who is at fault, even though there is a fault for the crash. We just determine how the crash occurred and what was the outcome. The reporting part, that is basically what my job is. I report every single thing on the crash. It gets reported to the state, it gets reported to the insurance agencies, and it gets reported internally and personally for those who are driving the vehicle. The last thing is accident statistics. Many might not know this, but everything you guys do on the roadway is all statistic driven. Anytime I stop a car, I issue a citation, I issue a warning, or it results into a crash. It's a statistic. That's how all these numbers get reported through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and internally through our state. That is how we make new roadway signs, everything. Determine speed limits on every roadway and everything as a result of accident statistics. So our move over law just recently changed last year. This one I want to really stress on to every single one of you. It doesn't just apply to law enforcement vehicles, tow trucks, emergency vehicles. It also affects every single person that's on the roadway, whether they're pulled over on the shoulder and they have their hazardous signals on. I'm going to read this for you. So, any driver upon approaching from any direction, any stopped vehicle making use of amber or yellow warning signs. In the new law, it states also blue. If driving on an interstate highway, other highway with two or more lanes traveling in the same direction as the vehicle, merge into the lane farthest from the vehicle and proceed with caution unless otherwise directed. The otherwise directed would be if it was from an emergency personnel, law enforcement, tow truck, or emergency for paramedics or fire. If driving on a two-lane highway, slow to a speed that is at least 20 miles per hour less than the posted speed limit, or 5 miles per hour when the speed limit is posted at 20 miles per hour or less, and proceed with caution unless directed. And at the bottom it says, this applies to the vehicles that have their hazard lights activated. And the portion of this, the best way to think about it, is if I'm pulled over on the side of the road, let's say on US Highway 12, and I have my amber stick, that's going to be a directional arrow stick, whether it's going left or right. It's telling you which way to move over. With that, the speed limit is 65. You need to slow down to approximately 45 or below, and you also need to move over. Between 2010 and today, over 20 highway patrol vehicles have been struck by other motorists as they were in the process of assisting in roadside emergencies. In addition, several other law enforcement officers have been struck in recent years. And in South Dakota, there's nearly 40 transportation department snowplows were struck. This year, we've had quite a few of our snowplows that have been struck by motorists on the roadways. This is our most recent picture. This happened, I think it was in January. One of our troopers in Sioux Falls who had his recruit with him, they were assisting on a motor assist on the side of the road, someone who was broken down. The vehicle came in from behind at highway speeds and struck the rear. As you can see, with just the highway speeds and minimal damage, you can look at that and anyone could assume that no one's going to be okay. But the good thing is that no one was injured severely or was killed. So this picture, not a lot of people know about. I learned this when I went to Reconstruction school. This picture was involving a van and a sedan, a really small compact vehicle. The red vehicle that is crushed was going over 100 miles an hour when it went head-on into a vehicle, which is the van. All parties were killed. This is literally what we're trying to prevent. The sign that's on the right-hand side, X marks the spot, Y die, or think and drive, this is where a statistic becomes into place. I don't want to see this on the side of the road with any of you guys. Just from that sign, it just shows that's where a fatal accident has occurred or where someone has died. So the three main things that contribute to all injury and fatality crashes are going to be speed, driving impaired, whether that is under the influence of drugs and or alcohol or both, and the seatbelt usage. So for speeding, in 2012, 375 drivers involved in traffic crashes were speeding as a result of the crash. Of those 22 drivers that were involved, 22 of those were fatal. 191 of them were involved in just an injury crash itself, whether they were the driver or the passenger inside the vehicle, and the remaining involved in the property damage only crashes. Property damage is anything that's on personal property, a parked car, mailbox, a tree, anything like that. So impaired driving, what is it? Impaired driving is operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol, narcotics, prescription medication, or over-the-counter drugs. When you think of narcotics, it's an illicit or illegal drug. Marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamine, any of the hard drugs that are out there. The most frequently committed violent crime in America is actually impaired driving. And impaired driving can also be texting and driving because you're not focusing on what you should be doing at hand, which is focusing on the roadway while driving. The last thing is impaired driving is no accident, nor is it a victimless crime. You can't say you're going to go do something, whether it's drugs or alcohol, and then get behind the wheel and say it was an accident that I drove and crashed by myself, or I crashed into another vehicle and killed a family. That's not an accident. That's a fault on you. So all of these statistics that are up here are based off of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So roughly 16,000 Americans die each year in alcohol-related traffic crashes. Nearly 600,000 Americans are injured in alcohol-related traffic crashes each year. And every day, 28 people die in alcohol-related crashes. That's one person every 53 minutes. So this crash right here, I believe there was only one person that died due to the crash, but it is a rollover. I don't know the surrounding statistics of how the crash happened, but I know it is a rollover. Most of the stuff was thrown out of the vehicle. But this is ultimately what we're trying to prevent. I've gone to plenty of crashes where I've come on and I immediately think they're going to be okay, but they're not. And I've come on to other crashes where you just immediately know it's already a fatal. It's not fun on my end to do that and then have to go to the family and tell them that a crash occurred and your loved one or your kid is dead now because of that. It's not a fun thing for me. So in 2019 in South Dakota, 488 crashes occurred within the state, and they were alcohol related. 18.4% of those crashes had no seatbelt use, which resulted in injuries. Of those 707 injury crashes, 76 of them resulted in fatalities. And this is why we have a zero tolerance when it comes to impaired driving. Currently, right now, our last statistic we have for this year, 2021, we are over 65% where all our crashes where individuals are not using their seatbelt. So what does alcohol do to my body? The first thing is it slows your reaction time. It impairs your judgment, it impairs your vision, it impairs a person's ability to complete numerous tasks at the same time. It affects coordination, and it affects person's ability to process information. So all of those play a key role when operating a motor vehicle. If you're under the influence of alcohol, this is the main factor. Drugs can have almost all of those, but they can't be the same. When you get behind the wheel and you've consumed alcohol, your reaction's not the same. If you're going to go to a stop sign, you could perceive that to be further or closer than you think it is, resulting you to either run the stop sign or stop short of it. Or, yeah, I'm not going to say that. The vision is a big thing. Your reaction time and your vision is a huge thing when you're drinking alcohol and you get behind the wheel. You perceive things differently, or you can't see someone. That's a big thing. Your coordination is going to be lost. Your speeds are going to be affected. So in our state, the DUI laws, no person may drive or be in actual physical control of any vehicle while there is a 0.08 blood alcohol concentration in that person's blood. 2, under the influence of marijuana or any controlled drug or substance which renders that person incapable of safely driving. And 3, under the combined influence of alcohol and marijuana or any controlled drug or substance. So how this works is that if I pulled any of you kids over, and I know prom's coming up here in Mobridge, but if you guys were pulled over for a traffic violation, I suspect that you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, I'm going to run you through standardized field sobriety tests. With that, if you're below 18 and you're a .02 or lower, you are still going to get arrested for DUI. If you're above a .08, even though you're below 18, you're going to get the big DUI, which is an adult DUI. That is a jail sentence. So the DUI punishment is a Class 1 misdemeanor. A Class 1 misdemeanor just tells me that that is an arrestable offense in the state of South Dakota. It is punishable by up to 1 year in jail and or a $1,000 fine or both. The zero tolerance DUI of 0.02%, this applies to every single person in this room. It is illegal for anybody who is under 21 years of age to drive, operate, or be in actual physical control of a motor vehicle. If that person has a BAC of 0.02%, or that person has consumed marijuana or any controlled drug or substance. So a lot of people get confused on actual physical control. So I could literally just pull up to one of you guys and just have a conversation. If you're in your vehicle, your keys could be in the ignition, but you're not driving. You're going to be stationary on the roadway. If I suspect there's any kind of alcohol or drug use, you can still get charged with a DUI because you're in still actual physical control of the vehicle, even though it's not started or you're not driving. So for a zero tolerance DUI, your driver's license shall be suspended for a period of 6 months for the first offense. If you get a second offense, it will be a 1-year suspension. And after that second offense, it continues to go on further and further for a year. It is a Class 2 misdemeanor, and then spend up to 30 days in jail and or a $200 fine. Also, you would have juvenile detention center around the state, which you could go to as well. So during the arrest procedures, you will go to jail. There's no exceptions on that. Your vehicle will be towed. There are known associated fees with that. You'll be asked to submit to a blood and or alcohol or blood and or urine test. You will have to call your parents to come and get you at the jail. There will be fines and punishments associated with the DUI arrest. Your driver's license will be taken away. Your insurance rates will rise, and is embarrassing from the public and you having to talk about it. Seatbelts, the Mythbusters. There's no excuse, but we're going to go over some. I'm a good driver. You may be a great driver, but there are a lot of bad drivers out there. In South Dakota, there is a motor vehicle crash every 30 minutes. Someone is injured every 90 minutes, and someone is killed every 46 hours. I'm just driving around town. I've heard that a lot around here and the surrounding communities. But 75% of all the crashes occur within 25 miles of home, and the roads have maximum speed of 40 miles per hour or less. Seatbelts are too uncomfortable. I've heard this excuse aplenty. While they are uncomfortable, they're the ones that are going to keep you inside the vehicle if you were to get into a vehicle crash. I don't want to be trapped in a fire underwater. Less than 1% of vehicles actually get submerged underwater or start on fire when a crash occurs. Safety belts restrict my freedom of movement. While this might be true, they're there to keep you in place for a reason. Without the freedom, if a crash occurred, you'd be thrown through the windshield, a side window, or a door. Bucking up takes too long. We have all heard the dinging in our car. It only takes 2.5 seconds just to click it, and then you're good to go. I'm not going to go over that last one. You can go over the second one. So seat belts are known for 3 reasons: the car's collision, the human collision, and the internal collision. That's all that happens in a crash when you don't wear your seatbelt. The car's collision, the first collision is known as the car's collision, which causes the car to buckle and bend and hit something like a fixed object or another vehicle and comes to a stop. It occurs in approximately 1/10 of a second. It's faster than you can blink your eyelid. Teens have the highest fatality rate in motor vehicle crashes of any age group. The leading cause of death for 15 to 20-year-olds is motor vehicle crashes. When you're done wearing your seatbelt, you increase the chances of being ejected from the vehicle. Unbelted occupants are 4 times more likely to die if they are thrown from the vehicle and if they can remain inside. Without wearing a seatbelt, only at 35 miles per hour, it is equivalent to falling down from a 3rd-story window. I can't go any further, but thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Officer Akron, and thank you for attending and listening live to Think and Drive, Stay Alive 2021 on Star 99. Our officer had the ability to speak to us today. We appreciate him being here. But another scenario that not many people think of or go any further into dive any further into the situation in which he's in. He lives within this community. We have officers that we all know. In fact, we're in a small enough community that there's a good chance you know the names of every officer here and they know your name or in your community. They don't only know your name, but they know your face, they know your parents, they probably knew when you were born, knew how many points you put up last night or last night's basketball. Those individuals are also in charge of answering the calls that don't make the right decision. There is a terrible accident. They get to come to the accident in which a terrible decision was made, and they are usually the person who I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Mobridge Regional Hospital in Flint. Our competent, caring, and compassionate staff are ready and willing to serve you and your family's healthcare needs. There are hundreds of reasons you could end up in our emergency room, and we're prepared to take care of you in all of them. But please, do not make it due to unavoidable circumstances your choice. If you're going to drink, don't drive, and always be sure to wear your seatbelt. Together, let's have a safe, healthy, and happy spring season. Mobridge Regional Hospital in Flint. It's about life. It's about you. All of us at the Kansas County Bank are proud to once again sponsor the Think and Drive program. Kids face adversity. Whether they choose to drink and drive or text and drive, their actions can affect everyone in a split second forever. Please take the time to talk with your kids about what they observed at the Think and Drive, Stay Alive program today. Proudly sponsored by Kansas County Bank of Harriet and Powell, member FDIC.
Proud to sponsor this Think and Drive program. Hi, this is Amber. The future of our community starts with our kids. Talk to your kids about what they observed at the program today and difficult issues they face every day.
We're with you. This is Rick. Talk to your kids about decisions. They won't get easier as they get older. So let's shape the skills and keep them positively thinking about cause and effect. Their choices affect all of us. It's not easy, but it's reality. We support you from all of us at the Holding Co-op.
Hey guys, you can do anything you want to me for your $50.
Well, what about her?
Sure.
This isn't normal. But on meth it is.
Third time's a charm. Welcome again to Think and Drive Live, Stay Alive on Star 99. Our next speaker up will be Stacy Bauer. Stacy will speak about the loss of her brother in an accident. So please help me in welcoming Stacy to the stage.
Whew. I'm a little vertically challenged, so I need to adjust that. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Dakota Radio Group, for putting this on. It's very important that you kids hear these tough messages. As you can see on the slideshow, there are pictures of my brother and I. Some of these are going to be some icebreakers. My adolescent years were not very nice to me. So anyway, there are pictures of my brother and I. There's a picture of the accident that I'm going to talk about today. There's some letters that my brother's classmates wrote to my parents after the accident, so please feel free to read them throughout the presentation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Stacy Bauer. My son is Brady Bauer. He is a junior here at Mobridge-Pollock, and not even he knows the story that I'm about to tell you guys today. But maybe he will understand now why I am such a seatbelt Nazi. First of all, I want to ask you all a question. By a show of hands, who all wears their seatbelt every time you get in a car? Show of hands. Be honest. I'm not going to have Highway Patrol Akron give out citations. Okay. It's good, but it's not 100%. And my goal here today is to get 100% of you to wear your seatbelts by the time I'm done talking to you. I'm not here today for me. This is not my idea of fun, and this is not easy. I'm here today to tell you a very personal story because I care about all of you, and I don't even know half of you. It's been 28 years, almost to the day, April 25th, 1993, a day that changed my life forever. I was an 8th grader, and my brother Eric was a 6th grader. There was a middle school dance Friday night that my brother was at, and my sister Renee and I were closing and cleaning up at the drive-in that we owned and operated. After we finished, it was my responsibility to pick up Eric from the dance. I went to the school to get him, and his friend Josh asked if Eric could spend the night at his house. I looked at Eric and I said, "What about Dad? Doesn't he need your help in the morning with chores?" He said, "Yeah, you're probably right. I better not." I wish I would have just let him stay. We left, and as we got into the car, I remember reaching back for the seatbelt, and I didn't grab it just right. It was twisted or whatever the case may be. And I thought to myself, we'll be all right. It's fine. So I didn't make another attempt. And I know that had I grabbed that seatbelt and buckled it, I would have asked Eric to buckle up too, because that's what you do, right? You buckle up and say, "Hey, everyone get your belts on." We started our way home, and about 2-3 miles into the drive, I started losing control. I overcorrected, and all I heard was gravel flying everywhere. We started to roll. I gripped the steering wheel. I remember my brother being thrown from the seat. He crossed right in front of me. And he was thrown out the side window. As we were rolling, I remember yelling his name several times. There was nothing we could do. And I can still see every crack in the windshield like it happened yesterday when I closed my eyes. And this was 28 years ago. When we came to a stop, the car was upside down. I yelled for Eric, and there was nothing but darkness and silence. I felt around the car, and I knew I had to get out. As I crawled out the window, I felt my brother. He was pinned halfway under the car. I had to crawl over my dying brother to get out. Once I was out, I grabbed his arms and tried to pull him free. I couldn't get him out. And he wasn't talking to me as I desperately yelled for him to just say something. The last thing I said to him was, "Hang on. I'm going to run for help." I ran to our neighbor's house, which was about a mile down the road. I entered their house and yelled for help. I grabbed their phone and called my mom and dad. They came instantly and went to the accident. They got my brother out from under the car, and they took him by ambulance to Linton, North Dakota, where he was pronounced dead. My dad came back to our neighbors, and the first thing he said to me was, "What the hell were you thinking?" All I could say was, "I'm so sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to." And the only thing I could think was, "Oh my God, I just killed my brother." I don't blame my dad for saying this or his reaction. He was in shock and doesn't even remember. As we waited for my dad and others to come back from the accident, I asked if I could call my friend Holly to be with me. Her mom brought her out, and I sobbed as she held me. I remember them telling me I had to go to Eureka to get checked out for injuries. I was fine and I didn't want to go, but they made me. My friend Holly was able to come with me. I remember telling her, I wish it was me and that I wanted to trade places with my brother. All she could do was comfort me and try to say the right words. We were 14. I don't know when I got home that night, but when I did, they told me to try and get some sleep. Yeah, right. Hell, I couldn't sleep last night. The next few days were horrible. People coming to bring food, comfort, help. We all went to the funeral home to pick out my brother's casket and make funeral arrangements. I remember my dad asking us kids which casket we thought Eric would like, because this would be his final resting place. This is nothing a 14-year-old should have to ever pick out. It was track season. It's like it is now. We were scheduled to go to Ipswich Tuesday. It was suggested to my parents and us to get our minds off the accident for a bit, that my sister and I go and try to establish some normalcy. I remember our oldest sister, Teresa, being there with her boyfriend. Teresa had a spare key to the car I was driving that night. We took that key and we buried it in Ipswich's football field. And I never wanted to see anything related to that car ever again. We ran our races and went home to get ready for the wake that night. The funeral was the next morning and it was huge. At the end of the service, my siblings and I each laid a single red rose on Eric's casket. My little sister Brittany was just 3 at the time. We had to pick her up so she could put her rose on his casket. It doesn't get much harder than this, guys. This sucks. I don't know when I went back to school, but when I did, I remember feeling like everyone was watching, talking, whispering about me, and I'm sure they were, but they were concerned. I just wanted things to be normal, and eventually things became normal, and we started living life again. But I will never forget this awful day, and a part of me will never forgive myself for what happened. Some of the people in my story, the kids from Mobridge-Pollock, all know. My friend Holly, standing right there, is now your principal, Mrs. Randall. My sister's boyfriend at the time is our middle school principal, Mr. Bolander. Ask them how this accident affected them and the impact it still has on them. No kids should ever have to go through this. Since I started helping coach track this year, you Mobridge-Pollock kids, I noticed some of you guys pulling up to the track and leaving the track not wearing your seatbelts. Well, kids, From now on, don't be surprised if I jack you if I see you not wearing one. I would much rather see you alive and at practice than dead. I want to take this time to thank our bus drivers. Our bus drivers have a huge responsibility all year long. They got you guys here today. They're going to take you home today. They get you to your events safely. While you guys sit in the back with your cell phones, doing what you do, you're all comfy, and a lot of times our bus drivers are white-knuckling it back home to make sure you guys get home to your parents safely. It's not an easy task, I'm sure. So when you see your bus drivers, please thank them. Unfortunately, some of you have been involved in car accidents already. Most of you probably have not, and I pray you never will. I just want you guys to know that you are not invincible. You will not win against a car. The next time you get into a car, I ask that you please buckle up and ask your passengers to buckle up too. If you're driving, it's your responsibility. Just please ask them all, buckle up. I will have that regret to live with the rest of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you for tuning in live to Think and Drive Live on Star 99.
One of these days, I'm going to tell them what I really think.
I know you had a bad day, but take it easy.
Come on, let me see your grad picture.
No, I'm so embarrassed. I didn't even know it was
Let me see it. You look so beautiful.
You're so cute.
That's the last time I put up with that. Time to start looking around for another job.
Seriously, Mike, you're starting to make me nervous.
Hey, grad is really fun.
I know, such a good night.
You're not thinking of going to a school out of town, though, right?
Oh, come on, you know I can never leave.
Kid, are you okay? Get help. Get help! Get help! Jesse, okay? Jesse? Jesse, open your eyes. Jesse! Jesse! Jesse, open your eyes, please. Please, Jesse, speak to me. Jesse, please, please. Please, Jesse, please. Jesse.
You know, there's a lot of things that can happen, especially to a young individual when we talk about driving. And probably one of the biggest things is this thing right here. I mean, we're all guilty of it. Something goes off and it's enticing. You want to take a look at it. In my political role as the Speaker of the House of South Dakota, I average about 1,200 texts a day. And for a while there, I was spending 9 hours on the phone, but I bought a headset for that. I'll tell you, One of the coolest tricks that I found is if you put that automatic driving feature on there, it texts back, sorry, I'm driving, I'll return your call later. Not only is it cool because it keeps you safe inside your vehicle when you're driving, but it's a cool little trick to, even if you don't want to answer it, just fire back that exact message, and usually people respect that. But you've got to create that habit first. It's very, very, very enticing to try to look at your cell phone to answer that text at that particular moment, just because you want to make sure you respond. And it's more of a respect thing, especially in an area like ours. It's something that we want to just make sure we respond to somebody promptly, but it's not that important. I promise you, there's nothing out there that has ever been that important to try to answer. So just remember that. Our cell phones are a very difficult thing to try to ignore. But another trick is, and many of you probably link yours to your vehicle to listen to certain music. We'll create a playlist, get it going before you take off on the road, and set it somewhere you don't even have to look at it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep moving on. So again, thank you for tuning in live to Star 99's Think and Drive, Stay Alive 2021. I want to introduce our next speaker. Many of you know this individual, Miss Charlie Tisdale. She was in an accident with Brady Keller on February 28th of 2016, and she will come here to share her story. So please help me in welcoming Charlie Tisdale.
Okay, there we go. I'll hold this. I'll just hold it. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Wow, lots of familiar faces down here today. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come up here and talk to you guys about a really hard time in my life. That was my aunt, actually, Stacy, that just talked. So most of you probably know who I am. But for those that don't, my name is Charlie Tisdale. I'm from Selby, South Dakota. I have 2 younger brothers that go to school in Selby right now. I currently am in college at South Dakota State University in Brookings, South Dakota, where I am pursuing my doctorate in pharmacy. I'm not much older than you guys, so hopefully I can help you guys relate to this a little bit more on a personal level, but I graduated from Selby High School in 2018, the same year that my dear friend Bradley Keller was supposed to graduate from Mobridge. The story that I'm going to be sharing with you all today is very difficult for me to think about, let alone talk about in front of a lot of kids that I know, so please bear with me. I imagine that some of you here today are very familiar with this story, and for those who aren't, that's okay. Brad's story that I'm going to be sharing with you is the harsh reality of drinking and driving. This is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. But before I get started, I wanted to say a few words about Brad. Brad was one of the most selfless, loving people I've ever met. He lit up any room he walked into with a huge smile. He was friendly, he was welcoming to everybody, and anybody that knew Brad would say the same thing. He had quite the sassy attitude when he wanted to. Those of you in the front might be able to read my shirt, but for those in the back who can't see it, it says, "Knew that." That was Brad's favorite thing to say. If he didn't have anything to say at all, that's what came out of his mouth. I didn't get the opportunity to know Brad as long as most people did, although I really do wish that I had that opportunity. Even though I didn't know him as long as some, our friendship was definitely one of my favorites. Brad had the most amazing group of people surrounding him. His twin sister, Brittany, is one of my best friends to this day. His parents have always welcomed me into their home. I don't know much about his other brothers, but if they're anything like he was and his family is, I know that they are amazing people as well. He always knew how to make me smile or make me feel better. So close to me at such a young age, and never in my life did I think I would be right beside him when he passed away. February 28th, 2016, the day that changed my life forever. As I said, I'm from Selby, but a lot of my friends went to school in Mobridge. Nowadays, with social media, I'm sure you guys understand that. You're not just friends from people in your town. We decided that we wanted to have a small get-together out at my dad's house on the farm, and I knew he was not going to be there that weekend. So I told all my friends that we could go hang out there. It was the weekend of state wrestling, so a lot of our friends couldn't be there, but a bunch of us still decided that we wanted to hang out. There was a good handful of us out at my dad's house. We were hanging out in the shop drinking, and we were messing around on those hoverboard things that were cool like 5 years ago. My brothers had gotten 2 of them for Christmas that year, so I brought them out into the shop for us all to mess around with. One of our hoverboards died, and the chargers for them were both up at my mom's house. I knew my mom wasn't home either, so she wouldn't yell at me for drinking. My dad had a lot of ATVs and Rangers and side-by-sides and that kind of thing being on the farm, and my mom's house was only half a mile up the road from my dad's. So I told everyone in the shop that I would be right back, and I was going to run up to my mom's house to get one of the chargers so that we could continue to mess around on these hoverboards. I told them I was going to take the Ranger because that would be the fastest way, and Brad said that he wanted to come with me, so I didn't go alone. There again, Brad being a very selfless person, I told him he absolutely could come. 2 of our other friends, and I won't say their names, they decided that they wanted to come with us as well, so they hopped in the Ranger. The Ranger seated 3 people, and we had 4, and we were not wearing our seatbelts, and we were also under the influence. I was driving up the road to my mom's, and we were laughing, and we were having a fun time. And when we got to my mom's, I ran inside to grab these chargers, and when I came out, Brad was in the driver's seat of the Ranger. He asked me if he could drive. For a split second in my head, I wanted to say no, and I knew that my dad's Ranger was hard to drive because it had been wrecked before, and the steering wheel was a little bit wobbly. My brothers can attest to that. It is kind of a pain to drive. I knew the curves around my mom's house were very sharp turns that you have to take slowly. Even though I knew all of this, I told him he could drive. Figured that we would be totally fine. We got to my mom's house safe, and it wasn't very far back to my dad's. And I really did not think of the consequences. We left my mom's house, and shortly after, we had rolled the Ranger into the ditch. Brad had taken one of the curves around my mom's driveway a little bit too sharp, and we lost control of the Ranger. We overcorrected and instantly rolled end over end. When it happened, I froze. I didn't know what to do. I yelled out for my 2 other friends that were with us, and they were okay. And they asked me if I was okay, and I was okay, and I yelled for Brad, and he didn't say anything. I looked down, and he was pinned underneath the Ranger, and I screamed for help. I was looking for my phone to call 911 and to call my mom, but I couldn't find it. And I remembered Brad took my phone from me when we were driving to my mom's house because he didn't want me to be on it while driving. The 2 other friends that were there helped me lift the Ranger off Brad and pull him out. This is a sight that I can't get out of my head to this day. There was blood everywhere. As soon as we pulled Brad out from under the Ranger, I started doing CPR. I took my phone from out of his pocket and had one of our friends call 911. Brad wasn't responding. I couldn't find a pulse. Our friend that was with us didn't know what my address was, so we switched spots, and she began doing CPR, and I talked to the 911 operator, and I remember screaming into the phone because I didn't know what to do. As soon as the 911 operator said they were on the way, I took back over for my friend doing CPR, and there was nothing more that we could do but wait and continue to do CPR. And that was the most helpless that I have ever felt in my whole life to this day. I never want to feel that way again, and I never want any of you sitting here to feel that way again either. Felt like an eternity had passed before the ambulance showed up, and when the ambulance got there, they rushed Brad to the hospital in Mobridge. I wanted to ride with him so he didn't feel so alone, but they wouldn't let me. They told me I had to go to the hospital to get checked out, and my mom showed up, and we followed the ambulance to the hospital hoping for good news. Good news did not come, and we were met at the hospital with the words, "He passed away on scene." I had to get stitches in my left elbow. That's it. I got stitches in my elbow, and Brad lost his life. It seemed and still is so unfair to me why such a good person was taken so soon. I blamed myself for months, even years. Even today, I look back and I think to myself, why did I feel the need to go get a charger? My decision to get in that Ranger costed my friend his life. Why did I think it was so important? Why did I tell Brad I could drive back to my friend's house? Why couldn't it have been me? I just wanted to switch spots with my friend. For the longest time, I thought it should have been me instead. To this day, there is still blame that I have for myself. My decisions had consequences that I was blind to. Brad was a son, a brother, and a friend to so many people. This moment in my life is one that I will never forget. I remember the entire night so vividly. Sometimes my thoughts feel so real, I feel like I'm reliving the situation. I get horrible nightmares. Sometimes I see cars in the ditch and I freeze and I have to pull my car over. There are certain days that I hear songs that we played that night and I still remember them. These feelings never go away. Some days are better than others, but the sadness, the anger, the guilt, they all still live with me today, and I don't want you guys to ever feel the way that I felt that night or sometimes how I still feel today. The days after the accident were some of the hardest days I ever had in my life. People would call me and text me and say how thankful they were that I was okay and how sorry they were that my friend had passed away. And it was really hard for me to respond to these messages. I was thankful that I was okay too, but I was sad and I was so guilty at the same time, and I didn't know how to handle any of these feelings. I shut myself out to people and I cut myself off from things that I enjoyed doing because of how angry I was about the situation. It was really hard for me to write this today because I didn't know how to put my feelings on a piece of paper. And it's really hard for me to try and explain to you guys how I felt because honestly, it was such a whirlwind of anger, sadness, guilt, loneliness, and heartbreak. I remember when the news article came out on Facebook that night, and a bunch of my friends from out of town texted me and asked if I knew who it was, and it was hard for me to answer this question because I answered them saying we. And again, everybody was, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're okay, but I'm so sorry to hear about the passing of your friend." I told you guys I felt really helpless during the situation, but I also felt helpless after. I remember going to school the next day, and I felt like people were looking at me and blaming me for what happened, and I felt like the center of attention, and I really did not like it. I felt like our mutual friends blamed me for the situation as well. I was one of the only people that really got to say goodbye to him, as I was the last one that he saw. Our friends out at state wrestling had to wake up to the devastating news that they lost one of their best friends and had to try and compete for a state wrestling championship that same day. The first time I saw Brittany after the accident, I didn't know what to do. I figured that she hated me and blamed me as much as I blame myself. But I was very wrong. Brittany opened her heart to me and welcomed my hurt with open arms and was there for me in a way that I couldn't be there for myself, and for that I'm forever grateful. A few days after the accident, there was a sign placed in my mom's driveway as a reminder to think before driving. It was the same one that you guys saw in the PowerPoint earlier. For the first few months after the accident, this sign was really hard for me to see. It reminded me of everything. I saw the accident replay over and over in my head. And I felt like every time I drove by it, it was never going to get better. Things were never going to go back to normal. It just vividly replayed. This was really hard for me for a while. The first few days after they put it up, I couldn't even drive myself to get to school because I would drive by it and cry. Now Brad Spots is one of my safe places, a place that I can go when I need a friend or just to cry. Being 4 hours away in college from this spot is really hard for me. When I was still living out on the farm, I would walk out there and just talk to Brad. Brad's family has made this a beautiful memorial for him. There are so many cool things out there that he loved that will be with him forever. As time went on, these feelings of guilt and sadness and anger slowly went away. I don't know that they ever really went away. I think I just learned how to live with them a little bit better, slowly but surely. I stopped blaming myself for what happened. Brad will forever be in my heart and on my mind, along with a lot of other people around the area. Although I have slowly began to forgive myself, I still live with these feelings every day. There's days that I wake up and I still wish that it was me, and there's days that I wish that I could switch spots with him. One of the only things that keeps me strong is knowing that Brad would not want me to be sad. I know that's something that gets a lot of people through this difficult situation. Brad would want us to cherish the time that we had together, but he also would want everybody in this room to learn from his situation. He was the same age that a lot of you guys are. I know for a fact that even though he isn't physically with us today, he's with us in spirit every day, and I know for a fact that he is right here with me now. Even though sharing this story is really hard for me, I know this is exactly where he wants me to be. He wants me to share this story with you guys so that we as a community can do our part in preventing a tragedy like this from happening again. I owe a lot to my family and my friends for sticking with me through this hard time in my life. Honestly, I don't know that I would be here without my brothers, my mom, my dad. This night changed my entire life forever, and I don't want any of you guys to ever have to understand what I went through. My Aunt Stacy has said some of you may have been in car accidents, but most of you probably have not, and that is a good thing. February 28th was a heartbreaking night for a lot of people. The biggest message that I want to convey to you is this. You never think it's going to happen to you, but it always could. You never think it's going to happen until it does. You always hear horror stories on the news about ATV accidents or car accidents that teenagers were involved in. I remember hearing those stories on the news and thinking, I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. After I was put in that situation, I thought of it in a completely different perspective. And I don't want any of you guys sitting here to ever have to think of it in the perspective that I have. Drinking and driving is not a joke, and it's not something to mess around with. I know you seniors, your graduation's coming up. Mobridge, you've got prom. Selby just had prom. Gettysburg and Hovind just had prom. The rest of you, I don't really know. But think before you drive. It's not cool to say the next day, oh, I was so drunk, I don't remember getting home. Because that could have taken someone's life, or your own, or a family's, or your friends, or your cousins. Always be cautious. All decisions have consequences. I was 15 when this happened. I look back on it and I think, why was I even drinking at 15? Sometimes we get lucky, but not always. Again, I can't stress it enough that it could always be one of you sitting in this room. I remember 5 years ago when this happened. Think and Drive was 2 months after Brad had passed away. And I remember sitting in here praying that they didn't say anything because I still felt very guilty that it was my fault, and I thought that everybody that was giving presentations would blame me too. I remember sitting right in that corner where my cousins Brain and Bryson are sitting, and they said Brad's name, they told Brad's story, and I had to get up and leave. I ran out the doors. I had people running after me. I didn't stop. I kept going. I vividly remember thinking, I don't know what I would do if they ever asked me to come talk at Think and Drive. And here I am today, sharing Brad's tragic story with you guys in hopes to prevent it from happening to any of you. I know I don't know a lot of you here, but I also know a lot of you as well. And I care very deeply for everybody sitting in this room. Think before you drive. Put your seatbelts on. Don't get behind the wheel if you've had too much to drink. Thank you all so much for giving me this opportunity to share Brad's story with you today. I, again, know that he would want me to be here. Thank you, Dakota Radio Group, for giving me this opportunity. And again, I hope that before you all get behind the wheel in the upcoming weeks of graduation and proms and just summer in general, summer rodeos, whatever it is, I hope that you all think before you drive. Thank you.
And thank you once again for sharing that story. And thank you for listening to Think and Drive Live on Star 99.
Talk to me. What's your first name?
What's happening to Jordy?
Keep looking straight ahead there.
There's no dad. There's no way I could have been that scared.
Well, I'll never see her again.
Till we get going.
Yeah.
Never hear her voice.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Thanks for that.
No worries.
Hear her laugh.
Take care of my baby girl.
Oh, well.
I'll never see her getting married.
Sure you don't want me to drive?
I'm all right. Only had a few. Besides, been eating your mum's food all day.
Cuddle her children.
She was here. Where is she?
I'll never hear her call me dad. And I'll never forget having to choose a coffin. For my beautiful baby.
Again, we want to thank everybody for being here today. And all of this is put into an event in which we are trying to help you guys make good decisions so that you can see the results of bad decisions so that you can avoid those going on further. The one tricky thing about this program, a program that I love very, very much and one that I support fully is the hard thing about it is trying to gauge its success. Because if we're successful here today, then you live. You made a right decision. You didn't do the wrong thing. You put yourself in a better position, and you're here the next day, so on and so forth. Instead, we still see, though, constantly the negative side of things, the side of bad decisions, what happens, the results of something that I feel like we could have said or we didn't say and maybe we should have said. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind when you go forward. Again, it's a great program. We appreciate you for being here, but make sure that you're fully taking it in and understanding what really could happen. As I look out into this audience and read some of the body language, I see a lot of, it's not going to happen to me, or this isn't that big of a deal, or, it's never happened to me before. But I'm here to tell you it can. And that's not pain that goes away. The individuals you've heard speak here today are brave individuals, braver than I'll probably ever be. And I'm fortunate to not have to have gone through some of these things. But that pain never goes away. You just learn how to live with it. It becomes normalized in your life, but it's still always there. So with that being said, again, thank you for coming to Think and Drive Live on Star 99. And our next speaker is going to be Michelle Jerome. Michelle's father was killed by a driver who was on drugs, and she still feels the pain and loss today. So please help me in welcoming Michelle Jerome.
Hi. So this is going to be hard. And I thought I'm not going to cry, but I might start off the bat crying. And what you just heard is to be asked to be a speaker is something that I wish none of you will ever experience. Because if you experience being asked to come up here, that means that some sort of tragedy happened in your life, some sort of loss. And I can tell you that loss stinks. Loss is hard. And all of you faces out here, it might seem like, I don't understand that. And that's why today, what I'd like to do is change the picture. Let's take the cloud off of everything that we've heard so far. And I want you to start feeling a sunny day. So can you imagine, because right now I can see the sunshine coming through. We've had crazy snow and all this crazy stuff, weather coming. But for right now, think about the sunshine. Think about summer. Think about all the fun things that happen in the summer. If you can't even close your eyes and lift your head up a little bit higher, let that sun soak down on your face, listen to the birds singing. You don't have a care in the world. Life is good. And you're about to spend this day on the lake. Isn't that cool? I mean, life doesn't get any better. And for my dad, life was all about being on the boat. Life didn't get any better if he could be fishing and on a boat. So picture that you're by the water and you're just about ready to get onto that boat. Like I said before, it is going to be a great day. Just look at that water. It's waiting for you to be there. Everything is going great. So what I'd like you to do, because today's been really heavy, is take a deep breath. And as you exhale out that breath, mind you, I am a yoga teacher, so I'm going to talk about breath. So as you exhale that breath out, let a smile come over your face and let you feel that feeling of a great day. Now, if you did close your eyes, make sure that you open them. Have you ever had days like this? Days where just everything's going right and you just are so looking forward to what's going to happen? Raise your hand if you've ever had a great day, a day where, yeah, everything's going right. Yes, let's get some hands raises. I know everybody in here has had to have a great day happen. Yes, really good days. So the feeling you're having right now, that's the feeling my dad was having. My dad, and also Gabe Jerome's grandpa, I don't know if you know him, he's from Mobridge-Pollock. It's Gabe's grandpa. It's also Trevor Jerome's grandpa, Tanner Jerome's grandpa, and Kaylee Jerome's grandpa. My dad was 2 hours away from going on a vacation for 2 weeks to go fishing in Devil's Lake, North Dakota with my mom. He was going fishing for 2 weeks, and it was 2 hours away before he left. Fishing was his favorite pastime, besides people. He loved people. At the last minute, my dad, he's going around checking everything before he goes on vacation. He's checking to make sure everything is just right because this is going to be the best vacation ever. 2 weeks fishing. Couldn't get any better. He checks the steering wheel on the boat, and he sees that it's turning kind of hard. And he thinks, well, I have time. I'm going to get on my moped. And yes, he did have his helmet on. And his moped looked very much like a motorcycle. And sorry, I didn't show the picture of the moped, but it looked very much like a motorcycle. And he decided that we lived in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, and 4 blocks, it was probably more like 3.5 blocks from the house, was a small engine repair shop. And he could drive there on his moped on a nice sunny day and go get some WD-40 to make that steering wheel turn a little easier. Now, I have a little video, and hopefully it can show, and what happened in 14 seconds. So that's the house where my parents live. We're going up a block, going up the next block, and right here, right at this corner, this is where everything changed. So as my dad was driving up the street to go get that WD-40 to help the steering wheel, a driver in a van was going down the street. The driver in the van shouldn't have been driving, and he wasn't paying attention. So right at that corner, things changed. But first, I want to tell you a little bit more about my dad. Not only was he a grandfather to 4 of my children, but 2 of my sisters. He worked for the University of North Dakota, and he helped everybody who's like you, college students who are looking for a job, who are looking for an intern. My dad met with you, and my dad helped you find a job. My dad loved people. My dad also had a degree in music, and he was the choir director of his church for years and years. My dad helped everybody with their problems. My dad told crazy dad jokes, and he laughed too much, and he laughed too loud, and he wanted to hang out with me all the time and with his grandkids. My dad was a huge presence, and not only my life, but many of the people's lives that he hung out with. Everybody knew my dad, and everybody firmly believed my dad would be around forever. He was one of those people that you just knew he was going to be around until he wasn't. The left turn that driver took changed everything. As my dad was driving up, the driver took a narrow left turn. There was nothing my dad could do. He was already there. There was nothing he could do to stop what was going to happen. And an accident like this could occur 1,000,000 times, and it would not end the way it ended with my dad. As he turned, my dad slid under the wheel. He hit my dad, and he slid under the front tires of the wheel, crushing my dad's lungs. It happened just right. The day started as a just right, perfect day. Less than an hour later, 14 seconds after he left the house to go get the WD-40, my dad was breathing his last breath. Now, you saw the picture of where my mom lived. She could witness that out of the kitchen window, the accident that happened. Luckily, she was not at the kitchen window, but if she would have been standing there, she would have seen it happen. He slid under the tire. It didn't take long for him to take his last breath, and in fact, he died on the way to the hospital from East Grand Forks to Grand Forks in the ambulance. As a side note, every single time I hear an ambulance, I say a prayer for that person because I know that somebody is suffering. So what was that driver doing? Well, he told the police that he had a brain tumor and that he was on brain tumor drugs. He was on way too many drugs. He was on painkillers. He was on opioids. He was on, I can't even tell you all the drugs. The moment of impact, it changed everything. I started talking about sunshine and summer sun and the lake. But let me give you a feeling of what it feels like when everything changes. So again, bear with me. You know I teach yoga. Can I have you close your eyes? And especially if you didn't close your eyes last time, this time I am very much asking you to close your eyes. And can you focus on the darkness that happens just when your eyes are closed? And now let's get our bodies into that feeling. Let your shoulders sag. Just let them come down. Let your body kind of slump. Relax your head down. Maybe even rest your head on your neck. And for 10 seconds, I'm going to be silent. And let that feeling of sorrow, sadness, of being alone. Now, when you open your eyes, you'll see that there's a candle. The black candle and that feeling of sorrow. People have told you stories about their lives and what has happened. If I can take you there even for 10 seconds to feel that sorrow, that aloneness. So what was the mindset of the driver of the van? I can tell you he never talked to us. We never found out, but I can guess based on the police reports. I can guess based on certain facts we've been given. That driver was just trying to get through the day. He felt sad and he felt hopeless. He was trying to escape the life that the world had given him. To escape, he took pain meds, oh, so many of them. He got in a van and he was impaired. Remember the police officer who was here who was listing all the different impairments? There's so many. It doesn't have to be drugs. It could be lack of sleep. It could be alcohol. It could be anything that impairs your driving. So he was impaired. He just wanted to pass his time. He was bored. He wasn't thinking about anybody else. He was thinking about his needs and how he could escape what he was feeling. I don't think it was his intention to harm another person. He just wanted what he wanted. And because he wanted it, he got behind a wheel and he killed my dad. How many times have you made choices that you knew were selfish? Choices that you didn't think really mattered or the consequences you could deal with later because, hey, you want it. Let me get you off the hook. It's human nature to want things. It's human nature to want to have fun. It's human nature to want to meet those desires in the moment. But what I'm here to talk to you about is the choice and to understand that choice. Because we all want what we want. We all desire to have a good time, myself included. And sometimes that good time gets escalated or get pushed on us more when our friends are saying, hey, let's do this. That peer pressure, those thoughts of, but I don't know. Should I really tell them no? Am I strong enough? Do I want to? So I need to ask you, and what I'm going to get to is the risk worth the reward? So my dad was here until he wasn't. Many times we have a choice to do this or to do that, and we choose in the moment. Who cares about the consequences? And we can deal with that later. But let me ask you, and as you've heard the other speakers talk, how do you deal with something so final as death? How do you deal with death later? Think back to the beginning of this presentation, the summer day on the lake. You're going to the lake, and this time you're going to meet friends, but you got there early, and you're going to meet your friends, or maybe your grandparents, or your parents, or your aunts and uncles. You're going to meet somebody there, and you're waiting, and they don't show up. 2 hours later, they still don't show up. You're waiting, and you're alone. 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours go by, and you're still alone. That's kind of what death feels like. You can't find the person. You're alone. It's final. So I wanted to take you just on a journey of the happy highs and the lows. But I also, if you open up your flyer here, if you open up the flyer, I asked that we included a dime in there. So if you want to take that dime off, please do. Weird thing happened when my dad passed away. All of a sudden, I started seeing dimes everywhere. It was crazy. I'd wipe off the kitchen table and there was a dime. I'd pick tomatoes in the garden, there'd be a dime laying there. My husband says that whenever he wanted to ask my dad advice or just thought, boy, I wish Don was here, there'd be a dime. So dimes started to become the symbol for our reason to pause, to think about my dad, and to think about the choices, how quickly those choices can change. Now, for you, it might not be a dime, it might be something else. What I'm asking is there something when you're making a decision that you could pause? It would allow you to pause and think, what are the consequences? What is it? What are my choices that I want to do? Do I want to go this way or do I want to go that way? So when you think of that little dime, take it over and flip it. And this is really, you've probably heard this before, but life truly can change on a dime. It can. A dime is the smallest of all the coins. So if you look at that coin and you think something so small could potentially save a life, keep that dime in your pocket. If you have a decision that you're wondering, what should I do? Grab that dime and go, what does this decision mean? I want to show you some pictures of my dad. I have 2 minutes left. I just want to show you a couple of pictures. This is my goofy dad. He always smiling. I told you how he belly laughed. I told you how he laughed too loud and always wanted to hang out with people. Let's show the next picture. It's a picture. Okay. I guess we don't have the last. There was 2 other pictures. There's one picture, the last picture that my dad took at the Texas Roadhouse with all the grandkids. It was the last picture. And again, it comes in twos. 2 weeks after that picture was taken, my dad was gone. There was another picture of myself, my mom, and my sister standing by his tombstone. I will tell you, we couldn't even order a tombstone. I couldn't look at a picture of my dad. That loss was so deep. Every time one of my children graduated, I thought, I wish my dad was here to see it, and I can't get him back. All because somebody was bored and drove when they shouldn't be driving. It took, my husband could maybe say, at least 5 years before we could put a tombstone on that graveyard. Because grief, I don't wish a grief like that on anybody. So sum it up and say, you know what? Life is about living. Life is about having fun. It is. We're human beings, and that's what we want to do. We want to smile. We want to have fun. But sometimes the choices we make in the moment, they change everything. They change on a dime. So please take that dime with you. Maybe it causes you to pause or find something else that is important to you. And when you have a choice, pause for a moment and wonder, what does this choice mean? Thank you.
And thank you, Michelle, Jerome, for those great words. Next, we're going to move on to our next speaker right away, where we will have Tasha Peltier come up and help share their story. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. As he mentioned, my name is Tasha Peltier. Many of you may know me as Katie Peltier's mom. My daughter is a student at Mobridge-Pollock High School. And today we're going to share a little bit about her dear friend, Emily. Emily Ann Holzer was born on October 9th, 2003 in Mobridge, South Dakota to David and Belinda Holzer. She joined the family with older brother Tucker. Emily was a happy and a rambunctious girl who enjoyed the outdoors. She loved every kind of animal and would oftentimes bring home hurt or stray animals to keep as pets. As a young girl, Emily learned archery and was fond of her bow and arrows. She also loved fishing with her family and anything she could do in the water, especially going tubing. One of her favorite memories was hunting night crawlers with her dad and brother to use for fishing. Teasing her older brother was always a source of laughter for her, although she loved him dearly. Emily had a lot of fun trying to beat her dad in throwing darts. She would often be heard saying, "New leader," as she pulled her darts. She also was an avid baker who was notorious for making pumpkin pie that she would sometimes share with her family. As a junior at Mobridge-Pollock High School, she had many friends and enjoyed hanging out with them every chance she got. She tried many different activities, including volleyball, basketball, and track. She was involved in student council and the Big Brother, Big Sister program. Emily had a strong faith and was confirmed in the Catholic Church. She was a very caring person, which led her to the part-time job of being a CNA in a nursing home. She was hoping to pursue a career as a physician's assistant after high school. Emily had a beautiful smile that would brighten any dark room. Her life was tragically cut short due to an accident on September 15th, 2020. She will be forever and dearly missed by her family and friends. Grateful for having shared in her life are her parents and brother, maternal grandparents Leon and Dolores Vogel, paternal grandparents Leo and Rose Holzer, maternal uncles Greg Vogel, Shannon and Sarah Vogel, Jason and Kim Vogel, paternal uncles Richard and Bernadette Holzer, Doug and Shar Holzer, Mark and Dina Holzer, and Aunt Deborah and Mike Holland, and numerous cousins. I'm going to turn it over to my daughter to share a little bit about that tragic night and her dear friend, Emily.
Hi, my name is Katie Peltier. As my mom said, I'm a junior here at the Mobridge-Pollock High School. I'm here today to talk about my friend Emily. I met Emily when I moved to Mobridge about 5 years ago, and we played softball and volleyball together, so we spent a lot of summer days together. And she was one of the first people that I met. And from the moment that we met, I knew we were going to get along. She was such a joyful person, and she had a contagious smile and a laugh that you could recognize in even the most crowded room. Emily was one of the most caring people that I have ever had the privilege of knowing. She spent many of her summer days working at the care center in Selby. She liked her job, and she loved working with the residents there. During school, when she wasn't working, Emily loved to watch our Mobridge Tigers, whether it was football, volleyball, or basketball. We even made it to some track and cross-country meets this year. She was there for it all, and she was a social butterfly if I've ever seen one. She could carry a conversation with just about anybody, and she loved meeting new people. She truly was one of a kind. September 15th, 2020. It was Emily's mom, Belinda's birthday. I picked Emily up for school at our usual time, just like I did every day. It was a normal day at school. It was just an ordinary day. I fell asleep around 9:30 that night. September 16th, 2020. I don't know about any of you, but I remember that day like it was yesterday. I woke up that morning about 6 o'clock, and I was shocked to see the amount of calls and texts that I had missed. After returning some of the phone calls I had found out about the night before, there was an accident. It was pretty bad, they said, but I didn't understand. I mean, how do you react to news like that over the phone? I was left with some answers, but many more questions. There were a few things that had been clear. Sarah was in the hospital, and Trenton had been airlifted to Fargo. But my biggest question was, where was Emily? I started getting ready for school. There was a knock on my bedroom door, and I opened it, and it was my mom, and my dad was sitting on the couch. I just had a gut feeling. I knew. She's gone, isn't she? I asked my mom, and she nodded her head yes. I didn't know what to do, so I called my friend Ellie, and we cried. I, along with many of my friends, did not go to school that day. But we spent the rest of the day reminiscing and talking about memories that we had with Emily and hoping that Sarah and Trenton would come home safe. Believe it or not, I was one of the lucky ones because a lot of our schoolmates went to school that day with little information. But as the day went on, the word spread. Childhood friends of Emily's and people that had known her for years were hit so suddenly with the news of her passing. I remember the texts and the social media posts, remembering Emily and showing support for Sarah and Trenton. There was a volleyball game a few days after the accident, and there were banners and t-shirts made, and after our volleyball team had been led to victory, they carried the banner over to the student section so that it could be hung over the gym. And I remember a bunch of the girls saying that it was for her, that one was for Emily. Trenton's football jersey had been carried onto the field by our team captains at the following football game. I also remember the rumors and the speculations that came about after the accident. I heard they were racing. I heard they were playing car tag. I bet she was on her phone. But the truth was that they weren't doing any of those things. They were just driving. Emily was going too fast, and she lost control. They estimate that she was going about 80 miles an hour. Pickup flipped 4 or 5 times, and Trenton and Emily were both ejected from the vehicle. Sarah remained inside. When the rolling stopped, Sarah got out of the pickup. Trent and Simone, who had been driving behind them, had already gotten out of the car. Sarah called for Emily and Trenton. There was no answer. Sarah, Trent, and Simone called 911, and they began the search for Trenton and Emily. When they found Trenton, he was having trouble breathing, so Trent held him in an effort to open up his airways. When the first responders arrived, they continued the search for Emily. Sarah and Trenton were taken to the hospital. We later found out that Emily was dead on arrival. Her parents showed up to the accident, and the police told her that Emily was dead on arrival. One thing that every single news report said about the accident was that none of the 3 were wearing seatbelts. Sarah had a short stay in the Mobridge Hospital. Trenton spent months in the hospital in Fargo. There were many times that we weren't sure if he was going to come home. Thankfully, both of them are still here with us today, and they're sitting in this gym with us. On September 15th, 2020, the world lost a beautiful soul. Many of us lost a classmate, a teammate, a friend. Emily's personality and heart touched many people even in her short lifetime. I will now read you a poem from the obituary of Emily Ann Holzer. But before I do that, I will leave you with a message that Emily's mom, Belinda, reminds me of every time I see her. Wear a seatbelt, because no mother should have to deal with the passing of her daughter. Please wear a seatbelt. If tomorrow starts without me, If tomorrow starts without me and I'm not there to see, if the sun should rise and find your eyes all filled with tears for me, I wish so much you wouldn't cry the way you did today, while thinking of the many things we didn't get to say. I know how much you love me as much as I love you, and each time that you think of me, I know you'll miss me too. But when tomorrow starts without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand and said my place was ready in heaven far above, and that I'd have to leave behind all those I dearly love. But as I turned to walk away, a tear fell from my eye. For all my life, I'd always thought I didn't want to die. I had so much to live for, so much left yet to do. It seemed almost impossible that I was leaving you. I thought of all the yesterdays, the good ones and the bad. I thought of all that we had shared and all the fun that we had had. If I could relive yesterday, just even for a while, I'd say goodbye and kiss you and maybe see you smile. But then I fully realized that this could never be, for emptiness and memories would take the place of me. And when I thought of worldly things I might miss come tomorrow, I thought of you, and when I did, my heart was filled with sorrow. But I walked through heaven's gates. But when I walked through heaven's gates, I felt so much at home. When God looked down and smiled at me from his great golden throne, he said, "This is eternity and all I have promised you. Today your life on earth is past, but here life starts anew. I promise no tomorrow, but today will always last. And since each day is the same way, there's no longing for the past." You have been so faithful, so trusting, and so true, though there were times you did some things you know you shouldn't do. But you have been forgiven, and now at last you're free. So won't you come and take my hand and share my life with me? So when tomorrow starts without me, don't think we're far apart. And every time you think of me, I'm right here in your heart. I want to thank everybody for being here today and for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Katie. We're going to move right into a speaker that's been around for a very, very long time, since the beginning. He's been coming to these events since the beginning. Now, many of the situations in which you've heard of already are 1-2 situations in which they've experienced, but this next individual has experienced most, if not all, of the situations that were discussed here today. So please help me in welcoming Mr. Ken Ripley.
Thank you, sir. Hi, my name is Ken Ripley. I've been a funeral director and county coroner for about 40 years. And every story here today has been part of my life. I've been doing this for 20 years. Have we been doing this, I think? And I used to plan things, what to say and do. But I don't anymore. I just kind of come out here and talk. And sitting back here today thinking about what I was going to do today, I thought of this. I'm not going to bother the guys in the back, but could I get 10 people here to stand up? Just 10 of you. Just 10 people. Okay, that's probably pretty close. About 13 here. Just stand up. A few more. Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's about 23. I'm going to ask you to stay standing for a minute. One of you represent Emily, Bradley, Danielle, Tom, Tommy, Caleb, Jessica, Novi, Lola, Haas, Cody, Andrew, Jaden, Jeremiah, Paul West, Ward, Jesse, Ty, Effie, TC, or J. Paul. Those are just the ones that I could think of. I just wrote these down this morning. Those were just the ones that I could think of. The kids that I could think of that have made up this program in the 20 years that I've been doing this. You guys look. That number's probably doubled. I could just think of 23 kids this morning that I have buried because of drinking and driving. Not that they were, some of these kids were victims of drunk drivers. Kids that were killed texting while driving, talking on their cell phones while they were driving. Some of these were suicides from bullying and these damn things and Facebook and social media, because everybody is really tough on a telephone and can bully and say mean and nasty things. Back when I was growing up, when somebody did that, we met in the city park and settled the difference. You guys use your cell phones. You know? I wish we could throw these away. And if somebody's getting bullied, they get popped in the nose. That'd fix some things. But suicides from bullying. Kids that couldn't take it anymore. 23, and that's all I could think of, was all, double it. Kids that sat in these chairs. We just heard about Emily. We just heard about Bradley. Danielle was a year or so before, was killed by a gentleman that was texting while he was driving. You see, and it's my job to put those families back together. Help them when something like that happens. I'm here to tell you there's no putting back together a family that's lost a child. Their life has changed forever. Guys, go ahead and sit down. But just think about the 23 kids I just mentioned. And they all sat in these chairs, attended this program. They made choices to do things. And sometimes choices, every time, choices have consequences. And for those, the consequence was the loss of their life. I'm going to tell you about some of them. Kids that I knew so well since they were little squirts, having been in the community for 35 years. One, a number of years ago, we had a crash scene docudrama at the high school where we put two cars out in front of the high school, and it was a crash and we had a fatality and things like that, a docudrama for the students. And the bell rang and the fire alarm rang and the students all came out, and in front of the school is a crash scene, and we have a victim and we have a drunk driver and we have this and that going on. The ambulance came, the fire department came. we extracted the fatality with the jaws of life, and I put the body of the fatality on my cot and put him in a body bag and put him in the back of my hearse and drove away. And that was a young man that I'd known since he was little. And he worked at one of the local gas stations after school and stuff. He'd change oil in my cars. He'd wash my cars. He's a good kid. And I put him in a body bag and we drove away and went around the block. And he's kind of joking and, you know, this is cool. Yeah. Can't breathe in here, you know, and stuff. Got around the corner, let him out, and then we went into the school auditorium and had a gathering, and we talked about what went on. That was about this time of year, right before prom. Shortly before Christmas that year, I put him in a body bag for real. Sure did. About 4 days before Christmas. That same boy. Caleb. Little girl from McLaughlin. It was a beautiful Saturday. I was working in my yard. We're talking, goodness, I'll bet 15 years ago now. In the beginning of this program, I was working in my yard Saturday afternoon, about 3 o'clock. The phone rang. Lorraine Herman from the hospital called me. Said, Rip, we got a bad one. And she told me what happened, and I'd known this little girl since she was a baby. Her and her mother were traveling south of McLaughlin, and they were hit head-on by a drunk driver. I remember going to the hospital. Caleb's mom was deaf since birth and had a cochlear implant. So she couldn't hear. She was in the hospital. She was injured in a wreck. And I'll never forget walking into the hospital room where Karen was. And when she saw me, she knew what happened. But we couldn't communicate because she'd lost her cochlear implant in the accident. All we could do was hold each other and cry. Because somebody chose to drive drunk. Made the choice to drive drunk. Tommy from Pollock, Tommy Reichman, back in about 2002 or 3. 2 weeks before graduation. Him and a buddy going from Pollock up to Linton. They were hit by a drunk driver. Tommy was killed. His friend was very seriously injured. His mom used to come and do the program with me. I met Tommy for the very first time at about 1:30 in the morning at the Linton Hospital, and I went into the emergency room to pick up his shattered body because somebody chose to drive drunk. Jessica, pretty little girl. She wasn't the most popular kid in school. She got picked on a lot. She was a nerd, I guess is what you call them. Didn't quite fit in. She wanted to really bad. But she couldn't. It got to her after a while, the picking on and the bullying. So she decided one night to take her dad's deer rifle. And kill herself. I can go on and on and on. You see, those things all destroy lives. They take away from us the person, of course, that's died. But as you heard Michelle and Emily's friend, Mrs. Bauer, talk about how the survivors, those that are left behind, their lives are destroyed too. You never get over losing somebody. That stays with you the rest of your life. You only learn to live with the pain, the guilt, or whatever. You only learn to live with it. It don't go away. It haunts you the rest of your life. They say COVID was an epidemic or a pandemic or whatever. I just had 23 kids stand up that have been killed. This is an epidemic, a pandemic. That number's probably doubled. 23 was all that I could think about. And every one of them affected my life. Because I had to try in some way to help that family survive the loss. One that sticks in my mind. They all stick in my mind, but one that almost haunts me. I was called to a scene over west of McLaughlin. 2 young people. Had been drinking, driving, going way too fast. The highway patrol figured they were going over 100. Went in the ditch, hit an approach. The car was airborne for over 100 yards. When it came down, neither passenger was wearing a seatbelt. When the car came down and started rolling, the passenger was ejected. The car rolled probably another 100 yards before the second person was ejected. So the bodies, if you can imagine this, were about 200 yards apart in a field with about this much snow. I got to the scene and I cared for the first individual and then went out into the field a little farther to get the second person, a young man. And when I got his big boy, probably weighed 200 pounds, big stout kid, you know. He rode the car the furthest. He braced himself, you know, with the steering wheel and was able to stay in the car the longest. But when I got to him, he had braced himself so hard in the car that when it hit the ground after being launched, his tibias pushed out through the bottom of his feet about that far. Yeah. ugly things happen. When I went over to him, his uncle was kneeling in the snow beside him. He had got to the scene, trying to fix his legs. See, those were all choices that people made that had horrible consequences. That was kind of neat what Michelle said about the dime. That's how fast life can change. In 14 seconds, we're on a dime. So many times we think it's an innocent choice that we're making. I can do this. Nothing's going to happen. I can drive. No, you couldn't. I had 23 examples of how you couldn't. You're my future. I come and do this. I never know if I'm saving anybody. I hope that I am. I hope that you hear. I hope that you listen. But I never know if I'm saving you. But I do know when I fail, because I have another child to talk about. Another family that I have to try and put back together. Another family that's been destroyed. I'm a bad choice. It's real. Please think. You're loved. You're important. Every one of you. And I want to talk to your faces every year. Thank you.
Again, thank you. And we'd like to take the time to thank all of our wonderful speakers and their families for sharing their stories. For without you, we couldn't put this on. The City of Mobridge for the use of the facility, Jesse Conold for the technical help, Brady Metler, Andy Shue, John Schreier, Marie Schreier, and of course our terrific sponsors, Key Insurance Agency, Mobridge Regional Hospital and Clinics, Hovind Co-op, Great Western Bank, Linscove Implement, Lock and Oil LLC, Dakota Bank, Northwest Beverage, CHS, River Plains, Campbell County Bank and Insurance, State Farm Insurance, Doug Heil Agent, Cam Wall Electric, Shorty's One Stop, Western Dakota Bank, Selby Veterinary Service, Mosers Main Street Market, Gas and Goodies of Mobridge, Cahill Bauer and Associates, and Kessling's Funeral Home. Just want to make sure we tell the students to remain seated as we will announce the schools as their bus comes to pick you up. Again, we want to thank all of our listeners and all those that attended in person for listening and tuning in to Think and Drive on Star 99.